Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Getting Into College Coach Conversation. I've got my friend and colleague, Julia Jones, here joining us for the final segment today. And Julia, we brought you on because we're coming here to the end of the school year. Students are transitioning into summer. It feels like a time to start relaxing. And yet, for seniors, this is a really important time where they can get a lot of good work done towards their application process for the fall. And when the fall comes back around, we're going to be looking at challenging classes. We're going to have essay supplements we need to write. We're going to be actually putting those applications together. So we want to talk today a little bit about how to use this 3-month period of time in a really smart way. And so I guess what I would start with is, you're working with rising seniors right now. School has ended. Is there any just initial advice that you want to give to them, or how do you prepare them kind of for thinking about the summer right now in this very earliest phase of that period?
Right. Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I do think that, summer is upon us. And so, you know what, I mean, I have a plan. I mean, I feel like it's great to look at the summer and say, oh, it's, especially after the year we've all been through,
Right.
Summer is a chance to spend time with family and friends and have fun. But it is, again, for rising seniors, it should be a working summer. So I think you have to get in that mindset a little bit of, there's going to be work done, and it's an opportunity. So I really encourage students to think about it. You've got a stretch of time when you're not in school, you're probably doing something, whether it's working or volunteering or, something or vacationing, but there's a lot of work to be done. And if you leave it until the fall of senior year, it's going to be hard.
It's not fun. Yeah, don't do that. How do you sort of introduce this idea to students? Do you think about it more from a standpoint of, here's what we'd like to have done by the end of the summer, and everybody's going to find their own path to get there? Or do you try and encourage students to have a little bit more of a regimented approach to what the summer is going to look like? What's your approach with the students you work with?
Sure. I usually like to have an end goal and an ambitious one, so that we, something to work towards. And then every student's going to be a little different in what their approach is. And part of it is based on schedule too. I mean, some students, if they have, are able to kind of to really work around whatever they've got planned. My kind of benchmark goal for most students that I work with is, look, by the end of the summer, we want to have your final list of colleges, or at least a pretty close, idea of not just where you're applying, but really also an organizational plan of, how you're going to apply, what applications are you using, and then also when you're applying, what are the deadlines, so we know what's going on, and then also to have that main essay, the one essay that you're going to be using for most of your colleges. That's also something I really encourage you. Let's have that done by the time you walk into your senior year, that's, so that you're able to really be able to say, okay, at least this one essay is done, maybe more, but that's a really good, starting point. So it gives them a direction.
Yes, I have been doing the same thing with my students, as those are the two targets. And then the third one is the activities list. I love to have that done by the time we get back into the fall. And I think because for me, and I don't know if this is true for you with the students you work with, the activities list is something that they don't really like to get in there and work on it. Like, it's just not as fun as an essay. It sort of feels a little bit more like busy work, even though it is really, really important. And so I think if you've got the activities list done, your personal essay done, your college list finished, that actually takes care of a huge percentage of the work that you're doing. Absolutely. And I'd love to talk about each of those three things. So let's start with the college list. You're our college list guru. You've been on before talking about college list stuff. I think a lot of people figure, okay, well, I'll just wait till the end of the summer, and then over the weekend, I'll sit down with my parents and decide where I want to apply. That doesn't work. How can students think about what actually needs to be done over the next 3 months to get them to that goal of knowing where they want to apply to college?
Well, if you haven't really thought about yet what you're looking for in a college, or started to put that together, then now is the time to do that. And so I think if, assuming that maybe you've had a little bit of, maybe you have a preliminary list, or you have an idea of what you're looking for, some basic criteria. But I think, it's research, really figuring out what's going to be the best fit. And I know that there are we're still in a time when it's not the easiest way to do that. You know,
Yeah.
you can visit campuses in summer, even though summer's not ideal for visiting schools, even, you know, when you can, because students aren't around. I think that, you know, for the most part, it's a time when you don't have to take off school, family vacations, you can build in college visits or make that your family vacation.
That's right.
Um, you know, and I think colleges are, you know, in this year after, as we're sort of slowly coming out of the pandemic, you know, colleges are starting to open up for on-campus tours. So if that's possible and you're comfortable doing that safely, then great. I think that should definitely be a part of it, so that you don't want to wait to plan to do all of your visits, you know, after you've been accepted. You don't want to wait until the fall to try and do, you know, on-campus visits. Some you might be able to do, but I think you want to really maximize the time that you have when you're not in
Yeah.
school, and you're able to do that. And if you can't visit on campus, you know, you can still do virtual tours and research, and, you know, that you can do at any time. You can do it, you know, 11 o'clock at night at your kitchen table if you want. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think that there are a lot of ways to really do that. But I think that's got to be part of it, so that you're narrowing down the list, you know, of the schools that are, you know, that are going to be, that are going to be good fits for you.
We had a group of our educators went to a virtual visit for University of Virginia earlier this spring. We also had a group that just went to visit Emory. I was in the Virginia group, and we got to talk to current students there. We got to see slideshows of things around campus. It's not the same as being on campus, but it really is interesting the way that colleges have stepped up to try and provide some form of an experience for prospective students. You have to keep in mind that colleges really want you to be interested. They want you to see what they have to offer. And if they can't do that through a traditional visit, they're finding ways to do that. So that's something you can do here over the summer. And I would just say, in terms of visits, summer is a great time to go and just get exposed more to what kind of college opportunities are out there. So it's a little bit more of a broad visit experience. I think in the fall, that's where you start to say, I've got a top 2 or 3 choices, and I really need to go and see those campuses to confirm that those are my top choices. And then in the spring, you might have an opportunity to revisit or to check out 1 or 2 that you got into that you didn't consider before. But you have to use sort of all 3 phases, I think, in some respect, without trying to go and see 10 schools in 1 week, you know, over the summer. I think there's a way of spreading it out a little bit more broadly to inform your research process.
Absolutely. It's you're trying to figure out, because you also have to decide, if, especially if you're deciding between early, am I doing an early decision? Am I
Yes.
doing, you know, that too is part, you can't do that if you haven't done your research. So I think that the research has to drive that.
It has to drive it. And it's really something you want to do consistently. I think a lot of students figure out you just cannot sit down and say, I'm going to research colleges today and decide where I'm going to apply. It takes a long time. And if you do it right, you learn something about yourself and your interests along the way that informs the decision-making process. And that's part of why it helps to stretch it out. All right, let's talk about the activities list briefly. And I think that the summer is often, we'll do a little bit of a departure here. The summer is a time, as you mentioned, that is quite unstructured, and there still is an opportunity to be engaged. Some students think, well, I don't have a chance to still impact my application. Other students say, I'm going to make a big impact on my application this summer. How would you think about what students should be doing, especially right now, if they haven't got something planned? What should they do? What can they look to?
Well, I think, you know, the key is to do something. And I think that's the thing, is there's no one thing that you need to do during the school year. And there's no one thing that summer, you know, is all about. It's following your interests, really finding those things that maybe you're curious about, that you maybe haven't had a chance to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe this is the summer, especially given that we've been, you know, this whole year has been a little bit, we've been in limbo. So,
Yeah.
you know, maybe this summer is the chance to, you know, to go to camp if you couldn't go last year, or, you know, or do that really cool summer program if it was canceled last year. Or maybe it's a time to get a job. You know, there's probably no better time ever that for a high school student to get a job right
That's
now.
Right.
People are crying for it, and work experience looks great on a resume. So, so I think there are definitely, you know, even things that some students think, oh, well, that doesn't matter, and sure it does. And so it's really looking at, you know, ways that you're getting involved, you know, following your interests, maybe doing things that are you know, going to really help further that resume.
Yeah, I think the do something is just a great refrain for students who maybe have missed the boat on some of that early planning, and they don't quite, they're striking out maybe with jobs, is go volunteer at the library every week. Go and volunteer, you know, for a local organization that does something you care about. And I think what's really surprising for students is just how much time they have over the summer, because School takes so much time. You have so many classes, so much homework, extracurricular after school commitments. When the summer hits, it's like, oh my gosh, I can sleep till 1 and stay up till 2. And we don't want to do that, right? Like we want a little bit more organization.
A little more structure.
In terms of how you're going to approach it. So I think that makes sense. And then I would recommend just like, and I don't know if you do this with your students, start taking note of what all of your activities are, keep track of the things that you're doing, get an early jump on this. I think you don't have to have a final draft of your activities list now, but you really want to be able to be done with that Common App by the time we hit Labor Day. Let's talk about the essay because we got a couple of minutes left, and I just want to think about what this looks like. You said try and by the time you go back to school, you've got a draft finished. Most students, I think, probably haven't started their essays, and I think that that's fine. Where do you begin? How much time do you need to devote to this project? And what are you looking like? What are you doing as a student? Like, how do you engage with this essay writing process? It's fairly new to these rising seniors.
Yeah, it is. And I think that there are, I think the best way to start some ways is just, think about what you want to represent or how you want to present yourself, look at the essay questions and get some ideas. But it is a process. It's not something you're going to do in a week's time or overnight or, the summer is the reason we are saying do this over the summer is because it can take
a long time.
That time. So I think you have to really, plan for that. And even the best writers, I don't think in almost 2 decades of doing this, I've ever worked with students, and I've worked with some great writers. You've never gotten it right the first exact time.
Never.
Like that first
I've never
draft
seen
is
that.
not going to be perfect. And that as a writer too. It takes some time. So, so you really want to give it the time, and the earlier you start, and even if you can get a rough draft, I also like the idea of putting it aside for a week or 2 or even longer, and then coming back to it. When you look at something with fresh eyes, you find new elements. Sometimes you find good things. Sometimes you find things that maybe aren't going in the right direction or looked great at the time.
Maybe they're embarrassing now. I'm doing this writing class, and like I'll go back and look at my writing that I wrote a year ago that I thought was awesome, and just be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I wrote that way. And you do need to do that. And I think good writers have a harder time revisiting their writing because they say, well, I did it right the first time. You go back and you say, this isn't quite right, and there's a little discomfort, I think, in that. Yeah. But that's what you need in order to get closer to that finished draft.
Yeah.
Julia, were you one of the educators that worked on the video series that we did on the personal essay this past year?
I wasn't. I think we had done a webinar that I was a part of, but
okay.
Not the video series. But I've seen it, and yeah, it's a great.
It's a really great resource. I think you can find it on YouTube on just like how to actually go through and write that college essay. But it really is something that stretches over many months, and that surprises families quite a bit. How many average drafts would you say your students go through to get from point A to point Z?
I mean, obviously it depends, but I would say at least 4 or 5.
Yeah.
I mean, and some more, and there's no harm in that too. I think at the end result, you want it to be great. And if it takes you 10 drafts, if it takes you a few ideas before you get the right topic, even, that's okay. But that's why you build the time that if you're doing it 2 weeks before the deadline, you're not going to have the luxury of being able to do all the things that are needed.
So get started, revisit it, be thoughtful in how you engage. And I think that that's true with the list. It's true with the activities list. It's true with the college essay. Those are the big 3 things that we want seniors to look at this summer. Julia, I think that's great. Thanks for coming and helping to break it down so simply in those 3 categories. Really appreciate it. Folks, that does it for today's show. We're out of time. It flew by for me. Hope you all enjoyed it as well. We will be back next week to talk about physical therapy programs, whether it's a good idea to head off to college with an intent to transfer, and how students pay for graduate and professional degrees. So another great show lined up for us next week. One little plug for you all. If you listen to us on Apple phones, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It helps us to be found by new audiences, and we love helping more and more families every week. So on behalf of Julia and the entire College Coach team, I want to thank you all for being here for today. Have a wonderful weekend.